So, welcome back to the Cloud Computing Insider, where we talk about the realities of cloud computing and how to make it work for your enterprise. I'm your host, David Linthicum, author, speaker, B-list geek, and here today with my special guest, Dmitry Panenkov, and he's the CEO and founder of Emma. So, tell us your quick background. I know you've been on the show before, but just catch us up with who you are, where you came from, what you do, what you focus on, things like that.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, David, for having me today. My name is Dimitri. I'm founder and CEO at Emma. I started my career 22 years ago as a systems engineer. So I have a networking and security background, and I started my career at one of the biggest system integrators in the world. And then I had a number of different transitions and switches from one role to another. So as I said, I started as a system engineer. Then I moved to product management, then to sales roles. And at the end of the day, so I was leading the sales for the biggest networking American organizations like Juniper Networks and Arista Networks. And in 2019, I decided to start my own company. So that's how Emma started, basically. And since then, we've been building the product that we're proudly, I think, sharing with our customers, and the customers, they can resolve different pains and different struggles they have when they navigate their multi-cloud journey. So that's who am I.
Yeah, and this rings a huge bell with me. I mean, obviously, I wrote the book on in terms of how people are using cloud and how people are adopting cloud. And I did notice, shortly after cloud first came out, that people weren't adopting cloud in homogeneous ways. And so, in other words, they're using heterogeneous solutions, typically more than one cloud. And then that got more and more and more and more. And I saw that as people were doing this, they were hitting this thing I called the complexity wall. In other words, they couldn't get past managing and operating the complexity. And what struck me about your product and the way in which you started the company, you addressed that specifically. In other words, you weren't trying to pivot a product there, but it built a product purpose built to address this issue, which I think is something that everybody has. I think it's something like 95% of organizations out there run multi-cloud, and normally it's gotten to without purpose. In other words, it's gotten to organically. They just decide that they're going to pick whatever best of breed technology they need to use. And so whether it's AWS, Microsoft, or Google, sometimes Oracle, IBM and the other things, and they just haphazardly kind of add these systems to it without regard for how to deal with the financial management aspect of it, the FinOps management aspect of it, the abstraction, the abstraction, the automation needs to occur in between them. And now they're scurrying around trying to fix these issues today. So what do you see as the common challenges that organizations are facing with the multi-cloud deployment?
So first of all, when we started building the platform, there was no a market for these sort of products. There were different companies trying to resolve the cloud complexity. It was more cloud complexity than multi-cloud complexity. But so it's still the same. The organizations, they use different cloud service providers, they use different managed services, and they face with different challenges. So for example, interoperability is one of the biggest one. So each cloud service provider has its own proprietary tools, its own proprietary API services, and they are not compatible one with another. Or sometimes, the great example, Kubernetes, super standardized thing. But they've managed to put this super standardized thing in the environment of a cloud service provider and build the entire lock-in around this super standardized thing. And you cannot interconnect, for example, AKS in Azure with EKS in AWS. So, but the Kubernetes itself meant to be an agnostic solution. And these interoperability challenges we see everywhere. Also, on top of that, there is the security and the compliance challenges. So different policies, different access controls, different user management things, different roles, all of that. And again, so if you have different environments, you need to, analyze this. So you need a unified monitoring and management. And we're not talking only about the observability, but also we want to provide our customers with an actionable tool, where we get the insights, we provide these insights, and then our customers can perform certain actions. And these are the struggles that we see on the marketplace, and that's what we try to address.
Yeah, and you just kind of hit the nail on the head. I think was something I see a bunch. I mean, people adopt, they call it a cloud native architecture, but Kubernetes and container-based deployments, microservice-based deployments, with kind of the battle cry that it's going to provide us with capabilities that are able to span cloud. So if I talk about cloud complexity and the ability to deal with operational complexity, they would throw back that they're leveraging a standard and open source environment. And you said something out loud that I rarely hear people address. Is the fact of the matter is it's not. In other words, all these things don't work and play well together automatically out of the box. You have to purposely build them to communicate one to another. It's possible, but you'll end up paying a lot more for your system than you originally planned. And so your ability to deal with the complexity and the heterogeneity in terms of how those things work and play well together, I think was ahead of its time, so to speak. In other words, when the market was not necessarily looking at it, and there were a few voices out there, myself being one, and we're getting into something where in 2024, 2025, 2026, this is going to be a primary focus. Even when you see AWS, I mean, Warner's Vogels did a whole, talk on complexity, which is basically the ability to manage complexity within just the domain of AWS. And I wrote about this in InfoWorld this week. That's not where the complexity stuff is an issue. It's the ability to deal with multi-cloud, heterogeneity, all these things that really aren't designed from the ground up to work together, that have to work together. And right now we're at a point where enterprises are deploying this stuff without rhyme or reason, without understanding the tool sets like yours, that they're going to need to make this happen. I mean, am I saying overstating the problem or understating the problem?
No, I think you understand the problem really good. And what we hear from the bigger enterprises, so during the reInvent, we had more than 600 different conversations with the different organizations at a different scale. We also had a few really important talks with the bigger players like Walt Disney, for example, right? And these guys, the cloud span is huge, and they leverage all of these cloud service providers, not like 2 or 3. They claim they use every single cloud service provider. And when you talk to these guys, you hear that, okay, we adopted all these different clouds. We have our cloud native teams. We have our DevOps engineers. We have cloud ops, FinOps guys. They have different tools. We do not understand a thing about the real situation that we have in the cloud. We do not understand how many instances we really need. We do not understand why we are spinning up functions instead of containers. Why do we use VMs instead of microservices? We do not understand this. And we want to simplify all of this stuff. We want to have an aggregated outlook on all the virtual resources that we have in place. We want to assign the different tags. And when we sort this out, we want to take action. So we want to get rid of useless services. We want to get rid of useless instances. We want to get a single pane of glass, and we definitely don't want to pretend that we are super professional technical experts that can automate everything within a few lines of code. We tried that and we failed, and now we have a 700 millions in the cloud span. We want to reduce that. And to reduce that, we need to simplify the things and just to get and understand what is really going on there.
Yeah, the number one complaint that I hear in 2024, 2025 from my clients is going to be the amount of money that this stuff costs. And I think it gets down to, you just kind of said what I think needs to be said. Cloud is way more expensive than we thought it was going to be when we deployed it. And when you look at the expense, it doesn't really get down to the fact that they're overcharging you as much. You can make that argument, but it's the fact of the matter is we're not deploying it with the right tool sets that we need to make it less expensive. So in other words, it's a self-inflicted wound, so to speak. So think about strategic planning for multi-cloud environments, how should enterprises right now assess their business needs and objectives for where they're looking to go? How this kind of gets into provider selection criteria for doing this, and should they put limitations on adding additional providers because of the complexity issue, or should they understand that the best of breed is going to be more the best business benefit they have, and therefore they should open it up to other players?
Yeah, so a great question. Thanks. First of all, I think there should be a cloud strategy in place. So I don't really understand the organizations when they just pitch something like, okay, we got to be multi-cloud because we read this in a certain study or report. So that won't work. That brings chaos into the organization. So what I think they really need to consider is the use cases that they really have in their organization. So for example, if they want 100% uptime or 24/7 uptime, and they understand that they cannot, for these purposes, rely on a single provider, then they need to define the other reliable option and the way how they will be scaling or like replicating the workloads. If we're talking about the best of breed tools, again, so different providers, they have different tools, managed services, and we should never lock ourselves into a single environment and struggle without like having the best of breed, I don't know, like OpenAI tool that Microsoft has. And again, so it's all about the needs of a company. If we want to like shorten time to market, if we want to release our products faster, we definitely need to use best of breed services. And then when you realize this, okay, so this is our strategy. We use best of breed services. We ship products faster. We want our customers to be more satisfied with the products that we ship. Then you need to define the right strategy, how you do this. So how you interconnect this workloads, how you synchronize the data, how you manage your compliance and the security around this multi-cloud setup, how you deal with your cloud and non-cloud environments that you might have. So all these things, they need to be addressed before you start this shift into this like multi-cloud reality. And there are different tools that can help organizations with, and definitely Emma is one of them.
So when would you prefer that customers think about using your tooling? Would it be after they realize there's a problem? And I know exactly when they do it, but when would you prefer them to think about it? So I'm strategically planning a multi-cloud deployment, and this is something that I rarely find. But we have to consider all the things that are going to make the multi-cloud deployment and management capabilities better and easier. So would you like to get engaged early in the cycle, or are you normally engaged after the cycle, after they've already made some of the mistakes in terms of deploying things with too much complexity?
I think we both know that quite often organizations, they don't even consider they have problems, or they do not even consider themselves as a multi-cloud organization. Sometimes, and I have already shared this several times, this is a great example. Sometimes you have situations where quite a big organization tells you, okay, we are not a multi-cloud at all. And then they say, okay, but there's a private environment as well. And yeah, by the way, in certain regions, we use a smaller local cloud service provider because they don't have any Azure or Google or AWS there. And you're like, guys, that means you're like multi-cloud, right? And then they start to realize, okay, yes, we are multi-cloud, and yes, there are a lot of problems which we need to get rid of, and then we need to deal with this legacy. We need to find the way how to how to first of all integrate these different environments and the different services they already have in use, and then how can we harmonize that. So that's the first thing. But definitely we prefer to start early, right? So we prefer to have a dialogue with the customers when they either start the shift into the cloud or they start the repatriation, because this is another big topic, like repatriation. There are a lot of companies who are moving back on prem, and this is another issue, especially for the cloud native organizations. So we prefer to be there at the early beginning. However, I mean, we need to educate the market. We need to tell them and explain them that there are like challenges, and it's better you start exploring the marketplace and you start defining your like cloud strategy and also exit strategy before you start moving into the multi-cloud reality.
Yeah, I think that's wise words. And, you think about it recently, I just covered Geico Insurance, a big insurance company in the States, and they've moved a significant portion of their IT from multi-cloud environment back to on-prem. And when you looked at it and did the analysis of it, they did it because they could not get the value out of their cloud deployments. When you looked at their cloud deployments, they didn't have a tool like yours to manage their cost infrastructure and the ability to have insights into things that they normally would be able to see. So they were saying this is 2.5 times the amount of money that we thought it was going to be. When I looked at their architecture and, from afar, they're really not necessarily managing the complexity challenges and dealing with the cost frameworks and, getting into the essence of why they're spending so much money. They just kind of balked at the fact that these clouds are charging us this much. The reality is that in many instances, you just kind of hit the nail on the head. You can fix the problem in place and you can get to a substantially greater value and certainly amount of money that comes back to the business. And I don't think that the enterprises are considering that now. I just don't think it's as widely enough talked about problem. For example, at AWS reInvent, they talked about cloud complexity within an AWS deployment, of course, but they didn't talk about multi-cloud complexity, some of the problems that you deal with, which is one of the reasons that people are not necessarily getting the business value out of these things these days. Do you see this as something that's going to continue to be a problem because there's lack of an understanding, no matter what you and I are touting out there? Is this something you think that the cloud users, the cloud IT managers, the cloud VPs are going to finally get?
I think a lot of people they are afraid of this multi-cloud and the complexity associated with the multi-cloud journey or strategy. But what resonates with people is the other topic, and I'm a big advocate of this. So being cloud agnostic instead of multi-cloud it's a different thing. So basically that means that you leverage different providers and you leverage different services that you really need. That could be a single provider today, and tomorrow you can spin up a managed service in the other provider and interconnect with the first infrastructure, with the first cloud service provider. And then the other day you can move all the workloads from provider A to provider B because you think it makes more sense for you to use these providers. So, I mean, we need to understand that all these infrastructure related things, they are commodity, like servers, like internet, etc. So I think we overthink the the importance of these cloud infrastructures, and that's why we are building complexities on top of the complexities. And to get rid of it, we need to figure out, okay, but this is just the server, right? And there are different servers, and the other things, they are like an abstractions or overlays on top of the hardware, which we already know as a commodity. So, and then when you understand this, you can start leveraging different environments, different clouds. You can become like purely agnostic. And that's why I really like the approach where the guys, they, for example, are 100% hybrid. So they have the majority of their workloads on-prem, but when they need to scale out the things, when the application feels that it needs to scale, they simply spin up the cheapest available instance elsewhere, and they scale their workloads like the Kubernetes cluster into the cloud. And then when they do not need this instance anymore, they just simply release that. They do not have any overheads in the hardware. They don't keep a huge cloud environments as well. So it's like the most efficient way for them to support their users and to scale their applications. And this is like the pure agnosticism, I'd say.
So define your tools in the context of all the noise out there that's around FinOps. Some of the cost accounting systems that are out there. I think that there may be some confusion as to the role of different tools and what they're able to do. I know that's a conversation you probably had 1,000 times a couple of weeks ago to AWS, but
Yeah.
do it for the audience here because I think it's an important message to send.
Yeah, sure. So there are different tools. They do FinOps, they do observability, they do containers or microservices management, they do security, compliance, regulations, network. So all of the things. And the important message here is that those tools, they're disconnected one from another. And sometimes quite often, these tools, they work with your different cloud accounts and they claim to be like a real multi-cloud management or multi-cloud FinOps cost management tools. But the problem is that they do the right size in the specific, or the management in a specific account they got connected to. And they cannot scale your workloads beyond this account. They cannot analyze the behavior of your workloads if they were moved to another cloud service provider. They cannot do these extrapolations, and this is something that makes us different. First of all, we have built the networking backbone, as I told you several times. This networking backbone is important. We eliminate the vendor lock-ins. We eliminate egress costs, so customers can go beyond a cloud service provider's edge, and they can scale their workloads and spread the workloads across the providers. And on top of that, we've built a software like a layer abstraction that equalizes the cloud service providers. So you can basically use the best-of-breed services. We look into the behavior of your workloads. We do the comparisons, and we tell you precisely if this cloud service provider and this infrastructure setup is the most optimal thing that you can rely on, or you got to move your workloads into something different, like different cloud service provider, different type of a service, this sort of things. So we work simultaneously with all the cloud service providers that our platform supports. We help our customers to spread the workloads based on the behavior of the workloads and to define the most efficient way of scaling these applications and the workloads our customers have. This is important. So we don't deal like specifically with this account of AWS or that account of Azure. We deal with all of the possible options that exist on the marketplace and allow our users to do whatever they want with their infrastructures. And we provide the suggestions, recommendations. So we want users to stay with the most optimal and the most efficient environment.
So often hear complaints about junk fees from people that are leveraging clouds, egress, ingress fees, storage fees that they just aren't aware of until they get the bill at the end of the month. Does your tooling kind of optimize around those sorts of things so they won't see as many of those and they're using the infrastructure in a way that's going to bring more value back?
Yeah, so this networking backbone that I started with is an important step and an important milestone for our company that we have built in the early beginning of our organization. So as I said before, we interconnect the clouds, and these are the direct connects. We have the hardware deployed in the data centers where the cloud service providers are based, and we interconnect these clouds. We have also presence in the peering locations. We ran the dark fiber. So and we can significantly reduce these egress fees. Normally, customers, they pay around 10 cents per gigabyte of data transfers for the data transfers. We can offer 3 to 4 cents. It depends on the volume, of course, but let's say it's 3 to 4 cents per gigabyte. So it's like 3 times cheaper, 2.5 times cheaper.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely an imperative that people have to me, to me, this is a no-brainer, and I don't understand why more people aren't using tools like you guys put out in the marketplace, because the value comes back tremendously quick and you can see it. So it's not this thing where you have a security issue and say, well, we avoided a breach, but we didn't know if the breach was going to happen, so we can't define the value. But you can actually see, at the as is state and the to be state with your tooling, and you get to a much higher amount of value, the cash that's coming back to the business you're able to deal with. And to me, it's something that shouldn't even be a question if you're sitting down and doing the architect. I always tell my architects when I'm teaching my cloud architecture class that this is something that needs to be first and foremost, and we're missing the little things that are causing us the most damage. In other words, we're not putting in the tool sets in place that are going to be able to bring back definable value to the system, and their eyes are open around this stuff, because it's not necessarily, if you look at the other architecture courses and the other people who are touting architecture, they're not putting putting this technology like yours first and foremost in their thinking. And to me, it's probably one of the most important components. I think it's up there with governance and security and things like that, and the ability to do cost management, the ability to resource management in ways that are going to make things more efficient is just something that has to be a part of the architecture. And I think it's getting out there, but it's getting out there in kind of a slow way. So what is a cloud management platform, the way the industry's defined it, and how are you guys kind of using that particular definition for the way in which you deploy your stuff?
Yeah, before I answer this question, I have one thing I would like to share with you, and actually I'm curious to hear your opinion in return. Sometimes we hear from the organizations that they are afraid to use tools like Emma because they simplify the things. And actually engineers, they don't want to simplify the things, because the complicated things, like let's talk about infrastructure as code as an example, where you need to learn this HCL thing if you use Terraform, right? So it's a specific programming language. These complicated things, for them, they work as a justification that they actually get these paychecks and they spend their time at the office working with this bigger organization. And they're afraid to replace these complicated tools with the simplified tools, because otherwise then people can start questioning, okay, well, why you pay that much? Why do we have so many engineers? Why we cannot do or like rotate them or reassign them to the other task, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think about that? Because we feel the major pushback from the, let's say, the most advanced technical community, where they explicitly say like, okay, guys, do you really want to replace us with the tool, or is it something else? So what do you think?
Yeah, I think they're afraid of being outed as inefficient and making mistakes. I think one of the things that your tool, I think, that it has to do, really kind of get to the values. You can spot inefficiencies and mistakes that were made, kind of in the core architecture. In some cases, may go back 10 years. So in other words, they've been wasting money that could have gone into other places. And when your tool gets in place, it puts a big spotlight on what those things are, and therefore your ability to fix them. You have to kind of understand the problem first before you're able to fix it. And all the tools go through that kind of a process. Your tool goes through that kind of a process. So it's like that with the FinOps tools and any platform optimization tools, and even somebody who's coming up and doing an architecture. The fear is not that it's going to work. The fear is that it's going to work. So because they're able to see mistakes that were made, 10 years ago. I spot them all the time. So in other words, when you look at the inefficiencies that are building, and this company spending $2 million a month more than they needed to spend because they're not using their resources as efficiently as they could. They're not using an Emma. They're not necessarily addressing the cost from a larger business perspective. And it's something that isn't necessarily a positive experience that you would think for the rank and file, the engineers, people who made the mistake, the architects, things like that. I've never seen companies go back and address it from a discipline point of view. So I never know what they're afraid of. But the reality is that we're continuously improving this stuff. We should always look for ways to do it better. And I think that the culture isn't necessarily in that place right now. In other words, they're concerned about their own careers, they're concerned about mistakes being externalized that they feel weren't necessarily going to be externalized in the past. And so you do get that pushback, even when a good architect shows up who really can highlight where these inefficiencies are and expose them. That's something that has an incredibly positive take on it, certainly from the management, the leaders, the investors. But the people who actually made the mistakes, not so much. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, totally. And the other pushback is always like, okay, we got this certificates from the cloud service providers we can use in our CV when we change the job, right? And this is like a cloud management platform. Who cares, right? So everyone cares about the underlying infrastructure and those hyperscalers, and we got certified with them, and we can leverage this to get a salary raise, etc., etc. But I mean, the cloud management tool, come on, who cares? So this is another thing. So everyone tries to work on their CVs because everyone wants to get a better job, and at the end of the day, so and it's not about like the problem that need to be solved, right? And the problem is a way broader. And actually, when you start acting cloud agnostic, when you start leveraging different platforms, when you leverage cloud as a commodity, you do not care about the certificates. And one day, I mean, that won't be that important. Look at the networking space. So I mean, 20 years ago, it was super important to be certified by all these networking organizations. Now everything is standardized. No matter if you are certified with, I don't know, Cisco or Juniper or Arista, you do the same things. You do like the TCP/IP, you do EVPN, BGP, VXLAN, whatever you name it. These are the standards, and even the CLIs, they look standard. So the same thing will happen with the clouds. And again, so the organizations, they should focus on the outcomes and the values for their businesses, and not on the certificates or building another center of excellence internally.
So do you think culture needs to change to use your tools? Do you think that in other words, they have to kind of think differently in order to get the most value out of Emma? And you run that into, if you're selling the tool into a company, is it the culture there that provides the most pushback? Or is it what we just talked about? In other words, they're concerned that past mistakes are going to be uncovered.
I think the great organizations and the great leaders, they think out of the box, right? Take 37 Signals as an example. I mean, they started, it's a Danish company, and they started the repatriation from the cloud, and they are very much successful. They have built a lot of like internal tools to support that repatriation. And I mean, they ship products faster. They deliver the best of breed products to their customers, like Basecamp and Hey. And I mean, but they're quite successful. But again, they started to think out of the box, and they realized that these cloud service providers, bare metal servers, these are only the tools they can leverage however they want. And this helped them to get rid of this incredible cloud bills. They reduced that, I think, by 80% within a year, and they're quite successful, as I said. So it's not about like the cultural shift. It's more about the understanding of the real importance of the products and the use cases that the organizations they have and they're trying to build, instead of being 100% focused on the underlying infrastructures or services or applications that cloud service providers they pitch you.
Yeah, and I've been watching the 37 Signals thing as well. David Hansen, I was participated in a documentary with him, and it was a culture that I view as optimized for utilization of modern technology. But the thing is, though, when you're dealing with the Global 2000 out there, then the culture has become a bit more of a blocking factor, at least that I've seen. And so when I'm talking to organizations and I'm trying to convince them to start looking at things that are more innovatively forward, including looking at tools like yours and some of the other stuff out there, I realized quickly that it's not about me making a technical argument, because they believe the technical argument. In other words, they know you can show it. You did a demo on this channel last time you were on, and it kind of blew us away in terms of the power and what capabilities you're able to do. It's the adoption capability, their ability to suspend their own particular personal agendas into moving toward the value of the company. And I think the 37 Signals thing is they went ahead and made unpopular decisions that were most enterprises wouldn't make. But the challenge, I think, comes in, Dimitri, when you're dealing with the Fortune 500, the Global 2000, when these cultures really kind of are very set and they're very difficult to get around. And you think about it, the culture is going to have to change a bit in terms of adopting new and innovative technology to get the most value out of what you guys sell. And I think it will change over time, but I do think that's a core change agent that needs to occur. You mentioned the same thing. They have innovative leaders that are, able to move the company in a much more productive direction. I think the reality is that we're probably not at the point where we do have these innovative leaderships there. I think we will over time, because they have to survive, certainly with the utilization of AI and things like that. But it seems to be, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, it seems to be the biggest challenge for folks who are out there promoting good architecture, resource management, things like that, things that you would do at Emma.
Yeah, 100% agree. So definitely, I mean, these things they can be done with Emma. And again, with the cultural shift, the industry is so huge. And definitely, deep inside of myself, I think, okay, yeah, we gotta educate the people. We need to make this cultural shift. But again, sometimes you don't want to say this out loud, because I mean, you're a relatively small organization, and there are like a bigger customers and the bigger players, and you don't want to start like telling them that they've been doing everything like the wrong way. So that's why I'm quite conscious here. So I'm just saying that there's gonna be a shift. Maybe it's not a cultural shift, but there's gonna be a shift in the perception of a cloud and how people they treat this environments and these certificates and whatever they have. But nevertheless, so Emma supports all the endeavors in a cloud. So if you or even if any one of your customers, if you act as a partner or managed service provider, you want to deploy something in the cloud or scale the workloads, and you are afraid of a vendor lock-ins, even if you have the existing commitment plans signed for years, and you want to get rid of it, this is also something that Emma can deal with and help you with. This is important to understand. So all these limitations, all these lock-ins, all these boundaries, they can be lifted when you leverage the real agnostic platform that helps you to get rid of it. So we support different teams. We support cloud engineers, we support platform teams, we support developers who do not understand how to deploy a thing in the cloud. They just have their GitHub with a code, and they want to have this code up and running somewhere in the cloud, and they don't even know what to do, how to start with. And Emma is a perfect tool here as well. So like several clicks, and you get your code wrap connected to a web server, for example, or a database, and you just simply leverage GitHub Actions to push your code into the Kubernetes environment, and your application is up and running with all the autoscalers, everything. So again, we are happy to work with everyone with all the tools the guys use. They can leverage their familiar tools, even through the API gateway. They can push their scripts with Terraform through the Terraform provider and deploy and automate the deployments of their workloads as well. So again, Emma is also agnostic in the sense of the utilization and how people use Emma. So different options, different connectors, different ways of communication.
Yeah, and I think that I think that as people's attitudes change around this, tools like Emma are going to force, kind of a reset in thinking. And I think that the innovation stuff out there, certainly that you guys are ahead of, kind of leads the direction in how organizations are getting better and better and better and adopting newer technology to make them more efficient. So I think that the availability of tools like yours are going to have the impact. In terms of not only making things more efficient, but also having people rethink and take on the challenge of some of the complexity issues when they need the ability to understand the impact of stuff and resource management. And I think that's something that you guys are going to be able to put your hat on. So looking at future stuff, we're doing this show in 5 years. Do you think we're going to be talking about the same thing and trying to deal with the multi-cloud complexity issues and implementation of financial frameworks and cultural stuff, or will it be nirvana in terms of our ability to deal with cloud management?
No, of course, it won't be nirvana. So we have a quite strict roadmap, and we understand that it is important to support our customers and the prospects with the platform that we're building that addresses different pain points and different struggles they have in the cloud. And one of them, and the biggest challenge today, is actionable FinOps, what we call actionable FinOps. So where you can provide the insights and the recommendations, but not only the insights and the recommendations, but you provide your customers with the ability to apply those recommendations and reduce their cloud bills and scale their workloads properly. So these things, we already have them on the platform, and in 2025 we have more add-ons to come to improve even these algorithms that we have, and to support even better our customers in their endeavors to reduce their cloud bills. On the other hand, we also think that it is important to provide our customers with the support and with the access to the best of breed technologies. That's why we always work with the different partners, with the different solutions. And now when all of us, we know that AI is a big thing. Well, first time we said AI during this conversation, but okay, it's a big thing, and definitely there is a lack of resources. And with Emma, we try to address this as well, where you can combine the different accelerators together from the different providers, so you can train your model and you always have access to these accelerators. So, I mean, we definitely want to support our customers from the different perspectives, not only like a financial operations, but also the accessibility of the resources and the efficiency in scaling of their workloads and their applications using the right environments underneath. So if VM suits, we gotta suggest the VMs. If we think that you might need microservices, you go microservices. If we think it's gonna be serverless, then we tell you it's serverless. So it really depends on the use case. And I'm proud to say that Emma understands this and provides these recommendations and the suggestions to the users.
Yeah, I think it's an outstanding tool. And, to the listeners, I think one of the actions you should take out of this discussion is go check out the Emma tools yourself and understand what they are, what they do, and the value they can bring to the enterprises. Because I think you're going to be missing out ultimately if you're not considering that, as a core capability that's going to be part of your deployment architecture. I think if people are deploying multi-clouds, this is it's mandatory that you address this thing. And I think Emma is going to be one of the tools that you pick, based on the capabilities of the tool. So, Dmitry Panenkov, where can we go and where can you send the listeners to find out more information about Emma, or maybe more information about yourself?
Yeah, so my LinkedIn is always open for any connection requests. So happy to continue on the LinkedIn with any one of you. And about Emma, so it's always at the same place. Emma.ms is our web page. MS stands for the managed services. So, and Emma stands for Enterprise Multi-Cloud Management Application. So Emma.ms is our web page. You can try our platform today. You get $100 in cloud credits to give it a try. And yeah, feel free to reach out in case you want to ask any questions.
Yeah, Dimitri is one of the smartest people out there, and he's got one of the better tools out there that you should be checking out today. So with that, we're going to call it. Hope everybody has a great year as we're turning toward the beginning of the year. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out our other shows. And also, Dimitri's been on the show before. Go check out his last show, which is a few weeks back. Where he does a demo. I urge you to check that out. It's probably one of the better hit shows, better viewed videos out on the channel. So until next time, you guys stay safe. Be cool.